Um, Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. My name is Andrew Sondry. I'm the president of the Germantown Democratic Club. This is the County Democrats' 6th Congressional District Candidate Forum, Part 2. We are here to hear from all of the candidates, all the Democrats who are running to be Maryland's next member of Congress from the 6th Congressional District. Just as a bit of an introduction, the Upcounty Democrats is a coalition of Democratic clubs and caucuses representing northern Montgomery County, including just the District 15 caucus, the District 17 club, the District 39 caucus, the Germantown Democratic Club, and the District 14 Democratic Club. And we're looking to expand, so we're hoping to do more outreach and bring more Democrats into the fold in our region to make sure that we drive out support. We know that the party wants to hear from us, and move onwards to victory in November. So I'd like to begin first by acknowledging that we do meet on the traditional lands served by the Piscataway people. We'd like to honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging, and we're called upon to learn and share what we learn about tribal history, culture, and contributions that have been suppressed in the telling of the story of America. So tonight we're joined by 6 of the 14 Democrats running to be the next member of Congress from Maryland's 6th Congressional District. Just as a bit of housekeeping, these candidates will have 1 minute apiece for opening statements and responses to all of the questions. There will be no questions submitted live from the audience. Questions were submitted in advance through each of the partner clubs and caucuses. We will have one of our excellent leaders from District 39, Sharon Cranford, is going to be keeping time. So if you hear her hop on audio, that's what that is. Without further ado, I'm going to dive right in. We're going to rotate through the candidates, but I'm going to dive right in with opening statements. So I'm going to start first with Ashwani Jain.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Ashwani Jain. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a 34-year-old son of immigrants and small business owners, product of Maryland public schools, published author, and a cancer survivor who worked in the Obama White House. I am running for Congress in my home district, not just to make history as Maryland's first millennial or first Asian to be elected, but because I have specific policy solutions to open the doors of opportunity for our community. That includes getting money out of politics, free public college, cancel student debt, Medicare for all, a $26 minimum wage by 2030, and taking bold stances like being the first in this race to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. I look forward to discussing all these and much more today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Always appreciate keeping it short, sweet, and to the point. I'm going to go next to Mr. Mohammed Mazumder.
Hi, my name is Mohammed Mazumder. I am a retired scientist with the Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, NRC. And also, I am running for Congress to represent you in Maryland District 6. My 3 most important issues are number 1, free Palestine. Number 2, expand transit. And number 3, reduce inflation. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Montgomery County Council Member at Large, Lori-Ann Sales.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the Up County Democrats for hosting this candidate forum. My name is Lori-Ann Sales. I'm a council member at large and excited to run to represent my district in Congressional District 6, from Montgomery County to Frederick to Washington, Allegheny to Garrett County. We need a representative that is trusted, tested, and experienced, and I have a smarter agenda that's going to get us to Congress to ensure Washington works for us. It starts with saving our communities to make them safer and more affordable. taking care of our veterans and military personnel, ensuring that we are advancing healthcare and sustainable infrastructure for all, revitalizing our economy with quality jobs, supporting our small businesses, tackling climate change, and investing in sustainable infrastructure, ensuring a quality education from cradle to career and beyond, including free access to education and restoring reproductive rights. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Joe Vogel.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Up County Dems. And thank you for the work that you do year-round to lift up Democrats in the Up County and beyond. I'm a state delegate. I represent Gaithersburg, and I'm proud to be running for Congress here in the 6th Congressional District, where I call home. Look, in the legislature, I've been focused on delivering for working families, taking action on gun violence, taking action on climate change, defending reproductive rights, would bring the same to the United States Congress. There are pundits that are calling this race not just a race for Congress, but a quest to define the future of Maryland politics. I believe that is what it is. And I'm calling this a race to reignite faith in our democracy. We know that our democracy is on the ballot in 2024. We have to defeat the autocrats like Dan Cox and Donald Trump, but we also have to reignite faith in this democracy to protect this democracy for generations to come. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Kiambo White.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, everyone who's joining today. Hi, my name is Kiambo White, vote of friends and family. I'm a moderate Democrat asking for your support and vote for the next representative of Maryland's 6th Congressional District. Based upon what I've seen in my life, I know firsthand while success is always not guaranteed, but I feel with the proper tools and resources, there's always possibilities regardless of your race, your gender, your religion, or your socioeconomic status. I believe to my core that the facts and the truth never take a day off. Our state, our country, and world at crossroads, whether it's fighting for democracy, climate awareness, healthcare, women's reproductive rights, just to name a few. Our attention and actions are needed. The choice and decisions we make today will affect us all for years to come. Those who come after us will look back with a sense of clarity to see what we lack today. And my question is, how do you want to be remembered? I want all of us to work together to find the answers. If we don't have the answers, let's ask for help. Sometimes we may not like what we hear, but information being provided. But please remember, the facts and the truth never take a day off.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Altamont Wilkes. Mr. Wilkes, if you're able to unmute, I know we were having some technical issues. It doesn't appear that Mr. Wilkes is able to unmute at the moment, but we will check in with him, and we'll give you a little bit more time as well if needed. I am going to go to the next question that we had, which is sort of a generalized question, which is just, as you see it, what are the issues of greatest concern to the residents of the 6th Congressional District? And I'm going to start this time with Mohammed Mazumder.
Yes, my number one, Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Ceasefire is not enough. Israel started this war in 1948. They are committing genocide. Congress can defund Israel to stop genocide. Israel should be disarmed. A combined single state is the only solution.
15.
Huh?
That was 15 seconds. You have 15 seconds remaining.
It's done? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your response. I'm going to go next to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you for that question. We know that public safety is a top issue of concern. We know that here in Montgomery County, we are down officers and juvenile delinquency is on the rise. Washington County recently announced that they were going to have to, they won't have any officers between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m. We know that infrastructure investments have not happened in this part of our community because the lack of job opportunities and investments is increasing the impact of crime. And that's causing businesses to not come to the area. So economic development investments need to happen. We need infrastructure investments.
15.
And we also need to ensure that our educators are paid appropriately. We have educators who are leaving the district to work in other parts of the county and leaving Western Marylanders
Time.
searching for educational opportunities.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Look, I a couple weeks ago visited an abortion clinic in Hagerstown, where I had the opportunity to speak to the providers there about the rise in threats that they're seeing, threats of violence and intimidation that they are seeing. I have legislation that I'm sponsoring now in the House of Delegates to create a fund, a security grant, a fund of security grant funding for reproductive health centers across the state of Maryland. I think protecting reproductive freedom here in the state of Maryland and codifying abortion rights at a national level is the key issue in this election. And number two is jobs. As I travel across this district, there is a need for more good paying jobs. I'm proud to have labor support because of my commitment to bringing good paying union jobs to this district.
15.
I'm proud of the work that I'm doing now in the legislature to bring good paying climate technology jobs and build out a climate tech industry here in our state. I'd bring the same commitment to Congress.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Kiambo White.
Thank you, sir. Well, for me, again, I feel like obviously the transportation budgets are definitely major issues, as well as someone already brought up the juvenile justice, public safety, and even with employment, even though an employment rate in Maryland is roughly right now 1.9 as the beginning of the year, counties, for example, Garnet is 3.8, Allegheny is 4.2, if I remember correctly, Washington is 3.1. So employment to where it's a living or sustainable wage where people really feel that they are they are growing for themselves and their families and aren't just maybe taking jobs, have to work 2 or 3 jobs to survive. Obviously, as well with the women's issues, even though we're a more quote unquote progressive state, there's still very rural parts of the state and western parts of the state who still believe some things they're being told that aren't quite the full stories. And I think also the democracy factor is very important because whether it's education, safety, or public transportation, if we don't have the right folks in place to make sure our voice is being heard and heard truthfully, then that will be an issue going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we did get a communication from Mr. Wilkes that there was that there is a lasting technical issue. So he's going to submit a statement, which we will share with all of you via email after this. So I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I spend 90% of my time, 7 days a week, personally meeting voters at their homes. And across this district, the main concern people have is they don't feel represented. And I don't blame them. My fellow candidates will say they care about this district, but half don't even live in it. My fellow candidates will say we believe in education, but they will not talk about making public college free or canceling student debt. They will say we must expand access to healthcare, but will not specifically talk about Medicare for all, which will save our economy more than $600 billion a year and eliminate premiums, deductibles, and copays for all of us. And they say we must uplift our communities, but will not push for a real living wage. That's why I talk about passing a $26 minimum wage by 2030, which brings every worker's salary up to the national average of $55,000 a year. And it is what businesses should have been paying had wages kept up with inflation. And we have detailed all of these issues in a comprehensive way at janeforcongress.com.
Excellent.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to the next question that we have on our list, which has to do with climate change. So one of the core crises that we have to deal with as a generation is the climate crisis. What do you see as the best way for the United States to respond to climate change? And what would you do to ensure that the United States lives up to its climate goals, even if Democrats are in the minority? I'm going to start this time with Councilmember Sales.
So we are in the midst of an existential crisis. We know that climate change is impacting us in various ways. We know that we have to ensure that we have stricter regulations at the federal level. We are seeing 20-year, we are seeing flooding here in Montgomery County. We are seeing infrastructure that is degrading, and we need to ensure that the same clean energy standards that we have implemented here in the county are replicated across the country, from building energy standards to investing in renewable infrastructure solutions, creating job opportunities, investing in solar, and ensuring that we are putting these investments into the areas in our communities that need it the most. We are not educating our community on the impacts of climate change. We are seeing it from everything in our food system, and it's impacting not just our generation, but future generations. And this is a top priority. I was proud to be a part of Maryland's Climate Solutions Now Act and its passage. And we are now looking at the regulatory environment for the Montgomery County's most ambitious climate solutions action plan.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
Thanks, Andrew. Look, I bring a personal urgency to this issue because when you listen to the climate experts, they project that by 2050, we're going to have the most aggressive consequences of the climate crisis. By 2050, I'm still going to be younger than the average member of Congress, right? And we have to reject this idea that tells us that we have to choose between climate action and economic growth. And I've made that clear as a legislator. I'm working together with Senator Brian Feldman on a bill we've been working for a couple of years together on now to invest $7 million into climate startups, early stage climate startups here in the state of Maryland, boosting a climate tech industry and making Maryland a leader in developing those technologies and solutions that we are going to need to make the process of reducing emissions and electrifying and adapting to climate change easier, more efficient, and cheaper. That's been my focus on the climate tech side, but I will do everything in my power to make sure that we are responding to the climate crisis with the urgency it deserves.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Kiamba White. Mr. White, the floor is yours.
Thank you. For me, regardless whether you're in Germantown, to Frederick, to Boonesboro, to Frostburg, I think it's so important to get in front of our communities, let them know the effects that this is having. Because somehow by providing factual data information, of whether it's about trying to recycle or just how our climate has changed in the last 20, 30 to 40 years, it's very critical and it's urgent challenge. And I think communication is a key factor with our communities, let them know how it can possibly be some job creation, but more importantly, how it protects them and their families and their budgets. So for me, it's, with environmental protections, acknowledging the climate change in all sectors. We only have one planet together, and somehow by acknowledging that things have changed, we live on a living organism, a living planet, but we don't want to acknowledge these things because somehow it's a political partisan thing to say. No, if something bad happens, whether it's floods or fires or mud or slides, we all have it. It's all can affect us all at the same time. So for me, it's acknowledging what's going on and making sure we get in front of each person as much as we can, because the policy can be put in place, but if it's not there and we're talking to folks, it doesn't matter as much. But thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I was the first candidate in this race back in October to release a climate agenda at janeforcongress.com that tackles the issue in a comprehensive way. We need to electrify all new cars, trucks, and buses by 2035, having a rooftop solar power mandate by 2035 as well, optimizing long-duration energy storage, so investing in R&D, buying and building more offshore wind farms, investing in renewable agriculture, making sure we don't drill fossil fuels on public lands, also looking at and working with our local elected leaders to have smart growth to prevent overdevelopment, focused on mixed-use development, not just single-family housing, investing in more mobility vehicles, expanding ride-sharing opportunities, especially in Western Maryland, the expansion of rail, designated bus lanes, enforcing agricultural zoning laws. 15 issues are essential to tackle this issue and look at it in a sustainable way. And that's what we've detailed, and that's what I would do as a member of Congress.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumdar.
Mohammed Musumdar, My number 2 priority is expand transit. Metro should be everywhere, including the Western Maryland. Let's extend the red line to Germantown and Frederick. It will help reduce congestion and improve safety, and also it will reduce pollution and global warming. We can even build a high-speed rail network.
15.
Okay, let's build a high-speed rail network from Hagerstown to DC. Stopped at Frederick, Gettysburg, and
5.
Bethesda.
Thank you so much. On to the next question. So one of the things that a lot of our members wanted us to ask about was the United States Supreme Court, particularly in regard to some of the very extreme right-wing decisions that they've been making lately, cutting abortion access, ending affirmative action as a couple of examples. What reforms would you support, if any, to the United States Supreme Court? I'm going to start off with Delegate Vogel.
Well, look, I think what we need to do is take preemptive action so that all of our fundamental rights aren't falling in front of the Supreme Court, right? And I take this personally as a gay Marylander, as a gay American, recognizing that one vote on the Supreme Court can determine my right to get married, right? That is personal. And what we're seeing now is both with LGBTQ plus rights, with same-sex marriage rights, and with fundamental reproductive freedom, we need Congress to step up and codify these protections. That's why I've committed that my first act as a member of Congress will be to co-sponsor the Women's Health Protection Act to codify abortion rights in our country. Also, I think we have to pass the Equality Act to codify LGBTQ plus rights in our country. And we have to seriously strengthen ethics regulations with our Supreme Court. We have seen one Supreme Court justice in particular do things that I think fall far outside of what should be acceptable for a Supreme Court justice, and there should be consequences for that.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mr. Kiamba White.
You're good. Thank you, sir. Well, for me, again, this is something that always kind of sticks in my mind where justice is supposed to be blind. I don't care what president or who puts you in power or who puts you in that long-term position. You're supposed to, when you're a judge, you're supposed to look at things without your own personal biases. And unfortunately, right now, we are leaning way too much in one direction, or folks who really only offer themselves. So I totally agree with what the gentleman just stated about having different standards or laws in place to hold accountability factors. Because so why don't they have the same rules and regulations that some of the state, local, or federal levels have? Just because you're in the Supreme Court. Also, I think it's very important to educate the community of how, not especially now with the women's rights issues, with immigration issues right now in Texas, for example, Governor Abbott is trying to push through something to have their own immigration laws for Texas. If that is allowed to occur, go to the Supreme Court, then that can be passed on to so many other facets with our country and our state as well. But education, making sure accountability factors, and making sure that they can't just bypass the voice of the communities that they're servicing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mr. Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question specifically, we need term limits, specifically 20-year term limits for all Supreme Court justices. That is going to definitively make sure that we don't continue to politicize our courts and have these issues that we're fighting and struggling to get passed and codified. Number two, it's actually getting money out of politics. As we have seen with certain Supreme Court justices, there's a conflict of interest, but that extends to even members of Congress. That's why on my campaign, 100% of my events are free, and I refuse money from corporations, special interests, and PACs of any kind. And as a member of Congress, I would push for legislation that prohibits members of Congress and their spouses from owning and trading stocks. We have to get money out of politics and impose specific term limits to answer your specific question.
15.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumder.
I don't have much point about the Supreme Court. But as he said now, that 20 years maybe the term limit. We can do it because some of them get so old and they're not capable of doing anything. Should I go next? Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Councilmember Sales.
Yes, from abortion rights to affirmative action, the Supreme Court has overstepped their bounds. We need to either increase the amount of votes on the Supreme Court, expand it, or impose term limits. We cannot have another term of a president who is going to roll back all the progress that Democrats have made in this country. It's scary to see what has happened in such a short span of time. My daughter now has less rights than my grandmother, than my mother had. It's scary to imagine what will happen if we do not put a rein on the Supreme Court. We are seeing every day that they are imposing their own beliefs on everything that our country stands for, and enough is enough.
Thank you so much. I am going to move on to the next question now, which is much in the same vein. So in light of the Dobbs decision and the Alabama Supreme Court's decision to restrict IVF, what would you do as a member of Congress to protect reproductive rights? I'm going to start this round with Kiamba White.
So sorry about that. Again, this is obviously challenging when you don't have the proper leadership in place to really have an honest conversation. It is something that really is challenging to me, how you can just negate someone's personal freedoms and ensuring their healthcare and their rights based upon, I think, the majority of our country, even Republicans, independents, don't want. So for me, it's very important to try to challenge your government leadership, but also Supreme Court in legal facets of why do you have to implement systems that are not beneficial for majority of the country, and how you can dictate. We're supposed to be about freedoms, and we're about pro-gun, but yet you want to tell somebody what they can do with their bodies, whether it's a young girl in Indiana who's been assaulted by a family member, or someone who's having complications. I come from a family. My mother had 14 miscarriages and some complications, and I did as well in some relationships. And those things are not easy situations to go through. But I would try to make sure the awareness has been raised and against the Supreme Court, but also our local communities of how this implications can affect everyone on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, so back when I released a healthcare rights platform in October, we spoke about these issues in a comprehensive, practical way, and that's what I would do as a member of Congress. That talks about federally protecting access to safe abortions and gender-affirming therapy, but it goes beyond that. We have to have Medicare for all. We have to have comprehensive sex ed in all of our public schools, which teach about gender identity and consent. We have to have free menstrual products in all of our public restrooms, because if toilet paper can be free, so should menstrual products. We have to invest in community health workers at a local level. We have to have living donor protections in place. We have to create mandatory minimum nurse to patient ratios in our hospital settings. We have to extend the solvency of Social Security. All these issues fall in line with reproductive justice to actually serve the residents that we claim to care about. That is the kind of action and bold leadership that we need at all levels of government, including in Congress.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumdar.
Yes, about the reproductive life, it should be an equal opportunity for all the women, not only the member of the Supreme Court, but the others also should have a right for everybody to participate in reproductive circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you. Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, as a member of Congress, what would you do to preserve and protect reproductive rights?
Of course. First, we need to codify Roe v. Wade. We need to ensure that we have an approach to this legislation to make sure that the Women's Caucus is behind ensuring that women have rights to bodily autonomy. We need to expand access to affordable reproductive health care services and protect a woman's right to choose. We know that over 25 million women in our country, ages 15 to 44, are now living with less rights than our mothers had. We need to ensure that people who are either sexually assaulted or unable to take care of their families have an ability to make a decision about their bodies. And we're going to work hard until our advocates and the coalitions that we will build will ensure that these rights are restored and they are enshrined in our Constitution once again. We have a chance to do it here in Maryland in the upcoming election, and I hope this will just be the beginning of what we'll be able to do in Congress.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you. Well, just today on the House floor in Maryland, I voted no on two budget amendments. One would have restricted Medicaid funding for reproductive health care here in the state of Maryland, and the other one would have provided funding to deceptive crisis pregnancy centers that we know are preying on women across the state. There's actually one right next to the Hagerstown abortion clinic that I visited where they're intentionally deceiving people to come in there instead of getting the reproductive health care they need. I've made it very clear, priority number one, and the first thing that I will do when I get to Congress is co-sponsor the Women's Health Protection Act. We have to codify reproductive freedom. We have to codify abortion rights the same way that I voted to as a state delegate last year here in Maryland in that constitutional amendment to codify reproductive freedom. I'll take that same vote and co-sponsor that bill in Congress, and we have to put an end to the Hyde Amendment that for too long has continued to discriminate against low-income women who are seeking reproductive health care.
Thank you so much. I am going to move on to the next question. This was another one that a lot of folks asked about, albeit in various different forms. And this has to do with healthcare. A lot of candidates talk about universal healthcare, and that is universal access or universal enrollment in some form of healthcare. What do you see as the best path to achieve universal healthcare? I am going to start off. We're back at the beginning cycle, so I'm going to start off with Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, I've been clear about this since I launched my campaign back in October, and I've said it several times here. We need Medicare for all. Beyond that, affordable healthcare is personal to me. I am a cancer survivor who had cancer at the age of 13. I'm currently program director at the National Kidney Foundation, a healthcare nonprofit. I served in President Obama's administration at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and even ran a healthcare program for then Vice President Joe Biden called the Cancer Moonshot. And I've learned that affordable quality healthcare is critical and a right for every American. And the only way to tangibly do that is not just giving you a generic talking point, but giving you specifics. Medicare for all is the only tangible, feasible way to get there.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Mohammed Mazumder.
Yes, I like the talk so far. It's about inflation. No. Reduce. What was the point now we are talking?
Healthcare. The best path to achieve universal healthcare.
Okay, that should be the best policy actually, to have the universal health care for all. Thank you.
I'm going to go next to Councilmember Sales.
Thank you for this question. As a public health professional with over 15 years of experience, I'm proud of the work that I've been able to do on the Health and Human Services Committee in Montgomery County and at places like the National Institutes of Health and Health and Human Services. We need a single payer system. The Affordable Care Act was just the beginning. We have Medicaid, we have Medicare. We already have a blueprint for how we can make affordable, quality healthcare accessible to more Americans. And we just need to have the political will to get it done. We need a bipartisan approach, and we know that Americans all across the country, whether they are Democrats or Republicans, they are struggling to pay for their medication. They are struggling to take care of any ailments that come up. If you're a cancer patient or you have any extenuating circumstances, you are not prepared to afford those services or the medications that come with it. We need to ensure quality, affordable health care, and universal health care will be a reality if I am elected to represent the residents of Maryland's 6th District.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
Look, I believe healthcare is a human right. When we talk about this issue, I think about that mom who's sitting outside the emergency room deciding whether or not she can bring her child into the emergency room, recognizing how that cost is going to burden her and her family. Medical debt is one of the leading causes of bankruptcy for Maryland families and families across this country. So we have to do something, and we have to do it soon. I'm also a pragmatist. I'm a legislator, so I recognize what can and what should be done. And when it comes to this issue, I don't see a scenario in which we can have Medicare for all without preserving some degree of private insurance. So I support a Medicare for all system that retains an element of that private insurance. Call it Medicare for anyone who wants it, right? I think that's the best path forward, the practical path forward, the pragmatic path forward, and something we will actually be able to accomplish legislatively in Congress.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Kiamba White.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, I think this is obviously it's a very important issue and personal, as with most of us on here, I'm sure. I had a mother who passed away of cancer. I had filed bankruptcy years ago because of a bad accident I had. And I was just in between jobs and didn't have health coverage. And I think for me, it needs to be a balance of where, again, some private insurance is still there because, again, a lot of folks do. I enjoy my health coverage right now. But for the states, for example, again, at my first organizing job was Obama campaign with the early push for the Affordable Care Act. And my first union job with ASME in 2009, I was working on pushing initiative for the Affordable Care Act. So I think inform our communities, also trying to curb the cost of drug coverage, because it's not just prescriptions like going, but you need your teeth fixed, whether it's need mental health coverage. All these things are so costly for folks who don't have insurance, but yet even don't have the opportunities. They do want to get help, they just can't afford it. So we definitely need to more education for our communities, but also hold the company's insurance and coverage to feet to the fire of the curbing the cost, which won't be easy, but there should be a balance of everyday insurance as well as private. The Affordable Care Act insurance type and private. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on now to the next question. And this is another one that a number of people asked us to ask of all the candidates. And it is an amendment on a question that I asked last time. And that is, do you reside in the 6th Congressional District? And if so, for how long? Do you reside in the district? And if so, for how long? I'm going to start with Mr. Mohammed Mazumder.
Yes, I have been living in this community for about 30 years or so. I work for U.S. Department of Energy for about 30 years. I live in Germantown, Maryland. So I like to represent District 6 of Maryland to emphasize all these things.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Councilmember Sales.
Yes, I have lived in this district for over 10 years. I helped change the district blue. I live in the city of Gaithersburg, where I was elected as the first African American on the city council. And I will continue to live in the 6th district and hope to represent all of the residents across Maryland's 6th district. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Delegate Vogel.
Yes, I live in Gaithersburg, right on top of our campaign headquarters, which everyone's invited to visit. And we'll make sure to send the address in the chat in just a minute. And represent Gaithersburg and Rockville currently in the state legislature. And if you don't live in this district and you don't have a plan to live in this district, you shouldn't be representing this district in the United States Congress.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mr. Kiamba White.
Yes, hi. I'm not I've not lived in Maryland as long as some folks, but I first came to Maryland back in 2008 when I first had an internship in Congressional Black Caucus. I lived initially in Germantown, then Frederick, and then even Cumberland for a little bit. I recently, for my day job as a union rep or national rep, I bounced around for my career. But I recently was in Baltimore, but now I'm moving back. I just got a place, moving back to Frederick here this weekend. But initially, I'm originally from Michigan, so I'm not a lifelong Maryland resident. But over the last 12 years, I've lived in the state roughly 4 to 5 years, and pretty much in the 6th district, and for a little bit in the Upper Marlboro area briefly. But majority of my time has been in 6th district.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Thanks for that question. It's really important. Yes, I am a member and live in the 6th district in Gaithersburg as well, right near Gaithersburg High School, with my partner and our animals. I was also born and raised in Montgomery County, never lived anywhere else. I was born at Shady Grove Hospital. It's a beautiful county, beautiful area. But more than that, we have serious issues that need to be tackled, and we need elected officials or candidates that not only live in the area they are trying to represent and care about, but also back it up with specific detailed policy solutions on top of all of that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I believe I got everyone on that question. So I'm going to move on now to gun violence. As we have seen in, I would like to say recent years, but it has not been recent years since this has been going on for far longer than even I've been alive. Gun violence is a major crisis in the United States that most other countries in the world don't face in the same way that we do. What would you do as a member of Congress to address the gun violence crisis at a national level? I'm going to start with Councilmember Sales.
Thank you for that question. We have a lot that we need to do to ensure gun violence does not continue to plague our communities. Just recently this week, we had a young man who brought a gun into a school right here in the 6th district. We have students, young people every day who are using the technology to replicate guns and create guns that are untraceable, committing crimes. We have to ensure that we are instituting more restrictions, not just on our gun manufacturers, but also ensuring that we make it safer for our communities by instituting background checks, red flag laws for anyone who has committed a domestic violence crime. And we need to put a ban on assault rifles. There's no need for them in our community. We don't need to have high capacity magazines. And we need to ensure that we have safe communities by holding those who do violate those laws accountable, whether it's through higher fines or stricter penalties, especially if they are committing crimes. I was very supportive of the governor to ensure that guns do not make it into our public spaces, but we have to be vigilant. Guns do not have a place in our community if they are not lawfully and responsibly handled.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
Well, gun violence is the issue that drove me to get involved in politics in the first place. Recognizing that after Sandy Hook and shooting after shooting after shooting like it, our federal government was doing nothing. And I believe we need a new generation of leadership to take on this challenge, a generation that has been defined by this issue, a generation that has said enough of this. We are going to ban assault weapons. We are going to require universal background checks. We are going to put an end to this idea that gun manufacturers somehow have immunity under Congress, under a law that was passed in 2005. That needs to be repealed now. We saw in 1994, after the assault weapons ban was passed, a significant decline in mass shootings in this country that increased exponentially in 2004 after that ban sunset. We need to bring that ban back to keep children in our classrooms safe and put an end to this epidemic of gun violence that has plagued our country and our generation for too long.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Kiamba White.
Yes, hi. Well, for me, this is obviously a challenging topic because whether you're urban, suburban, or rural, again, you have a right to protect yourself and your family and your home. And even if you're someone who enjoys hunting, I come from the Michigan area where people love to go hunting, and even obviously some challenging areas as well. And to me, it's just life is just too disregarded so easily. I'm saying, well, okay, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Those kind of comments are not helpful to anyone. We can acknowledge that you have a right for protection or if you want to use it recreationally, but that does not mean if you have some kind of challenging factors mentally or past histories that there shouldn't be accountability. And we can't just always continue to say, just because it's part of the Second Amendment, you have a right to do that. We have to have common sense rules and regulations about it. We have to also inform our communities. I think people take it so lightly what gun violence can do to a body, and someone who's been through these things and had family members or close soldiers murdered or in bad so through the situations, I think that is something that's important as well to really shine a light on what that is. So policies in place, it won't take away anyone's rights in them through the Second Amendment, but also allowing them not to just have a free willing nature of just having any gun because you think you can have it and you can purchase it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, back when I launched my campaign in October, we released, and we're the first in this race to release a specific gun violence prevention agenda, which again tackles this issue comprehensively. We have to hold gun manufacturers accountable. I want to also impose a voluntary gun buyback program, which would allow gun owners to trade their firearms for cash. And we would work with local law enforcement agencies to do that. Imposing universal background checks, supporting Ethan's Law so we have safe gun storage if minors are present, and imposing a penalty if not. Banning assault weapons, having and applying new merchant codes to gun shops so we can actually track who and where these guns are being purchased, and reforming concealed carry laws throughout the country so we ban certain guns and all guns from being around stadiums, museums, casinos, concert venues, fairs, schools, just to name a few. So again, you can go to janeforcongress.com to hold me accountable and look at this comprehensive plan that we've outlined.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumder.
Yes, gun violence is growing every now and then. So we should stop owning the gun. But if we have to own it, we have to have proper investigation and security clearance. So this must be taken very seriously. I have been hearing all this gun violence all over the world, all over the country. I like to stop this assault rifles for the gun ownership.
You so much. So one of the major priorities in the 6th Congressional District is transportation. As we all know, Governor Hogan undermined Maryland's interest by returning federal funding for the Red Line in Baltimore. And federal dollars are harder to get these days than they were when we had a Democratic majority. What would you do as a member of Congress to bring more funding back to Maryland and particularly the 6th Congressional District for our transportation priorities. I'm going to start with Delegate Vogel.
Well, we're doing some of this work in this legislature now to make sure that we fully fund transportation and address some of these projects that have been neglected for a very, very long time, and make sure that we fully fund WMATA, recognizing that they are now experiencing some very serious budget constraints. So I've demonstrated my priority to public transit. I'm proud to have the support of ATU, the Amalgamated Transit Union, and the workers in our public transit sector. The top priority for me right now in this district, and I made this clear when I was speaking to the leadership at the Maryland Transit Authority recently, is that we fully invest in the Brunswick line. The Brunswick line is key to economic growth here in the Up County and across the 6th Congressional District. I believe it should be a two-way, all-day, everyday system. I know there's some work that we have to do with CSX to make that possible. I would, as a member of Congress, make sure to get involved in those conversations and make sure that CSX gives us the rail space that we need, and then bring the funding that we need to fully expand that service.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Kiamba White.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, so for me, again, public transportation, again, especially mass rail, just number one, it helps. We already talked about these things earlier today. Climate change. It also can affect, good paying union jobs. But more importantly, it cuts down, not just cutting down the time, but whether it's accidents, so we have to make sure that we are challenging federal government why, and our state and local governments, why we don't have this. And for me, you have to put these things in where each community understands by having a reasonable bus or rail system, the cost that it can bring to your communities as a tax base, but also the safety measures. So I think once we can get our communities on board and then we push back on why we don't have them in certain areas, when yet 10 miles, 50 miles down the road they do, and really pushing back to like, well, why aren't you doing these things? Because it saves in costs, it saves in infrastructure, and all these things that can bring to our communities at large. We have to just not just say, well, they say we just won't work. We don't have enough room off I-70, right? Those are things you always hear. It's just not enough space, or you're going to do eminent domain. I've heard taking certain people's property. But right now, it's enough access, I feel, in this Western region to allow enhanced budget system, transportation system, which budget would be paid for by the cost once people start to utilize it. So pushing our local and state federal governments and getting more funding and infrastructure put in to make sure these happen.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, what's needed in Congress on this issue is someone who understands how to build coalitions at the federal level and fight for federal funding for these projects for our district. I have the most expansive federal experience of anyone in this race, which includes serving in 2 different offices in President Obama's White House and in 2 different federal agencies. And that is some of the work that I put in when we were the first to actually have an infrastructure platform at janeforcongress.com, which talks about smart growth, having multifamily mixed-use development to actually reduce some of the traffic that comes in from housing, investing in more MTA mobility vehicles, expanding ride-sharing opportunities, especially as you get further west, expanding and investing in rail, having more designated bus lanes. These are all concrete, practical, tangible solutions, but it does start with not only pushing for legislation, but fighting for that federal funding, and it requires someone who understands the levels of government at the federal level to fight for those.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumder.
We like to have transit improve in Western Maryland, and also we improve safety. We like to have let's extend the red line to Germantown and Frederick. We can even build a high-speed rail network. Let's build a high-speed rail line from Hagerstown to DC. Stop at Frederick. Stopping Frederick, Gettysburg, and Bethesda. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Councilmember Sales.
Yes, we need to ensure that we have a strong voice on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Congress. Secretary Buttigieg is a huge advocate for expanding transit and ensuring that we have the infrastructure to promote sustainability and equity. We need to ensure that the largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions, which are our single occupancy vehicles, are replaced with ensuring that electric vehicles are more affordable. We are putting more charging stations in the 6th district. We're manufacturing batteries right here in America. We need to ensure that we're developing multimodal transportation infrastructure solutions. We have to expand our rail lines, the service. We've been advocating for more MARC train access and more Brunswick lines to ensure that less people are in their vehicles and taking advantage of the public transportation options. Folks that live in Western Maryland are having harder times getting to job opportunities, educational opportunities, and getting around their own community. It's an economic barrier, it's a health impact to the communities, and it's a top priority for anyone who is going to represent this district to improve transportation infrastructure across the 6th district.
Thank you so much. I believe I got everybody on that question, so I'm going to move on to another one that several people requested we ask about. Foreign policy is a huge topic. As a member of Congress, your influence on foreign policy comes through crafting the budget and your relationship with the executive branch, who sets U.S. foreign policy. Can you tell us how, as a member of Congress, you would approach foreign policy issues with specific regard to Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza? I'm going to start with Mr. Kiamba White.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from the Detroit area. I grew up with one of the largest population of Middle Eastern folks outside the Middle East. And it is a challenge because I don't care whether you're from Gaza or Israeli. The typical person you meet is not someone trying to take away our freedoms or try to disregard you from where you're from. And I think, unfortunately, the other side is doing a great job in pitting folks against each other. And unfortunately, there definitely need to be a balance of, again, we can be anti-Netanyahu and know that he's a horrible human being, in my opinion, and at the same time know that Hamas is taking advantage of their folks and trying and basically murdering them as well. We have to acknowledge those challenges and try to find a balance. And also when it comes to Ukraine, again, this is a world economy. We're not just here by ourselves. And the things that the Ukrainians have been doing and fighting for and be successful at, they just need to continue to have funding and support. And I would make sure that these issues are brought to the floor in a proper manner and fashion and not just let be disregarded because someone wants to get votes or make sure someone else is in office. So acknowledge what Ukraine has done on their own, make sure we continue to fund and make sure that the Israeli conflict is concluded to the best possibilities for both sides, those who were mistreated during October 7th, but also what's going on now with all the hunger and the situations now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, this is really important. When it comes to the Middle East, for example, some of my fellow candidates say we must protect human rights, but they have become pro-war candidates who have turned a blind eye to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. I have been the only candidate since November who has been calling for a ceasefire and conditioning military aid because I believe in the right and nuanced approach that supports our ally Israel's right to defend itself against Hamas terrorists while also calling out Netanyahu's apartheid regime of ethnic cleansing with no regard to civilian lives. To be clear, the only way to prevent further loss of innocent lives, get aid to the civilians who need it, and get the hostages released is through a ceasefire. And I'm happy that the White House finally understands this. We must now demand better from all of our other leaders. Moving on from that, I do believe we need to condition all military aid based on upholding humanitarian law as defined by the UN. We already have this practice in place under the Leahy Law, and we already have those regulations set in place from our departments of justice, state, and defense, and that is what I would push for if elected.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Mohammed Mazumder.
Like to stop aid to Israel. They are doing it since 1948, genocide in Israel. We like to have a single country with both community representing, and also about the helping Israel. Israel is a money people. We are losing a lot of money in helping Israel.
15.
Okay, thank you.
Last but not least, Delegate Vogel.
Did you get Councilmember Sales?
Oh, I did not. I'm so sorry. Councilmember Sales. My bad. I double checked you the
I
last
gotta
time.
defer to my friend Councilmember Sales.
Did you ask about foreign policy in general or
Yes.
just Ukraine? Okay.
Both. So how would you approach foreign policy issues with specific regard to Ukraine and the conflict in Gaza?
Thank you so much for those questions. The war in Gaza has been so contentious with residents in our community having family members overseas who are dealing with the conflict. We have to ensure that we bring allies home and we demand an immediate ceasefire. We have to work towards a two-state solution, and we have to ensure that civilian casualties are contained as much as possible. We also need to ensure that we continue to support the fight in Ukraine. We cannot allow Russia to continue to think that they can go into countries and seize land illegally and terrorize innocent civilians. We have to put sanctions on those countries, and we have to have stiff penalties for anyone who goes against our allies. And we have to work with our alliances to ensure that peace is brought to these war-torn countries. We're seeing conflicts in Haiti. We're seeing it in Africa. We have too many world issues happening, and we have to ensure that we have peace alliances and ambassadors in every corner of our country, of our world, making sure that this is a priority, that we are creating better relationships with our foreign allies and our adversaries to diminish any potential conflicts across the world.
Thank you so much, and sorry to have missed you there. Now, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you. Look, we run into a real serious danger if we engage in foreign policy with slogans. We have to recognize the dynamics that exist. We have to recognize the nuance that exists in our foreign policy. When we talk about a ceasefire, you cannot have a unilateral ceasefire. If we want there to be a lasting peace, we have to have a bilateral ceasefire that we get to through negotiations. That needs to include an immediate release of the 130 hostages who are still being held by Hamas since October 7th. I have been very critical of the Netanyahu government and their efforts that I believe undermine the prospects of a two-state solution, in particular when you look at settlement expansion in the West Bank. When we look at Ukraine, we know that what Russia is doing
15.
is signaling a message to the entire world, in particular China, when it comes to Taiwan. They are seeing our failure to respond and saying, well, if this is how they're going to respond to our invasion of Taiwan, why don't we go ahead and do it? We have to send a strong signal in Ukraine that we stand up for democracy. We stand for the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. And we have to stand with our allies in Israel, in Ukraine, and across the world in this fight for democracy, for sovereignty, and for territorial integrity.
Thank you all so much. I am going to go on to the next question now, which is Congressman Trone has made the opioid crisis a major priority during his tenure as our member of Congress, um, as it is an issue that disproportionately impacts Western Maryland. How would you build on Congressman Trone's legacy to combat the opioid crisis? I am trying to remember where I think I started off with Mr. White last time, so I'm going to go to Mr. Jane.
Yeah, I mean, this is all part of our what I released back in October, a criminal justice platform that ends mass incarceration. We have to legalize marijuana while expunging records at a federal level. We have to decriminalize the possession of scheduled drugs, and instead of sending you to jail, send you to a local and fully funded rehab center. We have to end for-profit prison contracts. We have to end the money bail system. We have to prepare those who are in prison for release. We actually have to have a real living wage. We have to make sure that people get access to good jobs, good education, and good housing. All that is interconnected and ties into this issue beyond just the rhetoric and the generic talking points. And again, you can go to janeforcongress.com to look at those details and to hold me accountable.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Mr. Mazumder.
Yes. A combined single state may be a long-term solution for this Israel and Palestinians. The other thing is, that is my only opinion in this respect. The other thing is foreign country like Israel, foreign country like Russia, and what is the name of this? And Ukraine solution is an international solution. It became a very, very much international. Okay, which should be handled internationally. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Sales.
Yes, Congressman Trone has been leading on the opioid epidemic and has created investments, given his position on the Appropriations Committee, to invest in drug treatment centers across the 6th district. We need to ensure that we are looking at the social determinants of the opioid addiction epidemic. We need to have not just interventions, but we need to invest in targeted solutions for ensuring that we are equipping our residents with naloxone to intervene for anyone experiencing an overdose. We need the drug treatment center investments to ensure people who are struggling with addiction have options to regain control of their lives. We are really proud to have the former mayor of Hagerstown now leading the opioid epidemic task force for the state of Maryland, going from county to county to raise awareness about the resources that are available to ensure that no more communities have to deal with this epidemic. We're seeing higher rates of people using the emergency room because of the opioid epidemic. Maryland is now the epicenter of the longest wait times due to the epidemic. We don't have enough staff to take care of this problem, and we have to ensure that our residents have treatment options, and we have to have stricter penalties at the border to ensure we are not allowing this drug, fentanyl, to get across the border and illegally into this country. We have to hit this issue at every point. It's taking the lives of our children. It's ravaging communities and families. We cannot turn a blind eye or rest on our laurels. We have to take swift and immediate action in Congress. And we have a lot of work to do to combat this epidemic because it is totally ripping our communities apart. That's why we're seeing high crime rates in places like Cumberland, and we're seeing the overdose increases in the community. Frederick has now created alternative schools to ensure that students don't lose the academic awareness and progress that they're making as they are struggling to get back on their feet. This is something that's very personal to me. My mother was an outpatient addiction services drug counselor, and I hope to continue this work and ensure we have more counselors to help people who are struggling with this crisis.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
Well, this has been one of the issues that I focused on in the legislature. The only bill that we passed last session in the legislature was a bill that I authored and sponsored to close the gap of fentanyl testing in our hospitals. I have a number of bills this session to address access to naloxone for students in our schools, making sure that Maryland follows the lead of Montgomery County, allowing every student to carry naloxone without getting punished for it to save a classmate's life if necessary. In a bill that I'm very proud of that we got to keep working on and got to push through to cap the cost of over-the-counter Narcan now that the FDA has authorized it. Look, I'm a little concerned because I've heard some of the folks on tonight refer to this issue in the context of the criminal justice system. We have to look at this in the context of public health. That's been my focus as a state legislator. It's ensuring that we take all the necessary measures when it comes to public health, that we expand access to naloxone, to Narcan, that we address the gap of fentanyl testing in our hospitals. And this is not, we know, yes, often Republicans will talk about this and mesh this issue together with the border. We know that fentanyl is actually coming in through legal ports of entry. And there is enough fentanyl in this country right now. This is a terrifying statistic. There is enough fentanyl in this country right now to kill every single American. So we need to make sure that we are fully investing in prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation, following the model of programs like Brooks House in Hagerstown. I visited there 6 times already to see what they're doing and see how we can scale that across the country. And I look forward to joining the work group that Congressman Trone created and continuing to make this a priority of mine in the United States Congress.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Kiambo White.
Yes, obviously this is definitely a challenging topic, and I am someone who dealt professionally with folks who have drug addictions. For me, it has to start with having conversation with those individuals because a lot of times we don't like to not saying point fingers at anyone, but we have to acknowledge that people have a need for this for some reason, whether they feel their lives aren't going the right way, maybe it was earlier abuse during their life, whatever those factors are. But we need to have really good, honest conversations, but also accessibility for folks to maybe have some mental health and/or drug prevention. So whether it's public health policies, community-based strategies, it's intervention, it's law enforcement. And again, something like the gentleman just stated, isn't just drugs coming, like people bringing them over from the southern border. These are legal drugs that, because we do business with China so much, that we sometimes want to push back on some of the wrong things that they have done bringing drugs for our country. But I think having those direct conversations with folks who do feel they need these drugs and feel like their life better, but also trying to challenge our communities, our legislation on why we don't have certain things in place to help folks who are going through this. Whether it's Suboxones or whether it's just mental health, we have to make sure we have these options in place, and then push back on some of the challenges and also the communications that are coming across, like it's just from one specific group.
Thank you so much. And it looks like that was everybody on that question. And also, I think the audio for our timekeeper might have gotten drowned out a little bit. So I think a couple of people went over, which is okay. But I just want to make sure that we are all able to hear as well. And when we hear the 15 seconds, we keep a track of that. I'm going to go to the next question, which as all these questions is an important one. The path to a Democratic majority in Congress lies in Maryland. The 6th district is the only swing seat in the state, and it is one of a handful of districts that's being targeted by the National Republican Party. How will you appeal to swing voters, and what is your strategy to win the general election should you succeed in getting the nomination? I'm going to start with Mohammed Mazumdar.
I would like to see actually religious practice is religion. Practicing religion is the most important thing to stop genocide. Israel is doing this for a long time. So since 1948. So I like to see people have more approach to religion to stop.
The question is about winning swing voters.
Or swing voters, yeah, I'm sure they will be willing to help
15.
our what?
So you have 15 seconds. Feel free to share and give him the 15.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Councilmember Sales.
Yes. Okay. Can you repeat that?
Oh,
question?
yes, I'm sorry. And we can start the time again real quick.
Yes.
The path to majority runs through Maryland. How will you appeal to swing voters, and what is your plan to win in November if you are the nominee?
Yes, thank you so much for that question. Having served at the municipal level, where it doesn't matter if you have a D or a R behind your name, we were able to pass bipartisan legislation across the state of Maryland and across the country with the National League of Cities. I'm so proud of the work that I did with lawmakers all across the country to ensure our cities, our communities were working better together. Come November, we have over 80,000 independent voters who are eager to, put their support behind a candidate who has a history of building consensus, has a history of actually passing legislation and getting
15.
things done. And our pathway will ensure we talk to everyone in the district. We will be a representative for everyone in Maryland. We will not pick and choose who we are talking to, and our Smarter Six District agenda will resonate with every voter across the district, regardless of their political affiliation.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
So we've run this campaign focused on building the kind of support that we need to win on May 14th, raising the resources, getting the endorsements, getting the ground mobilization and organization that we need in every corner of this district. I am a firm believer that you cannot start campaigning in Allegheny County and Garrett County and Washington County in the more conservative, more competitive parts of this district on May 15th and think that you're going to win this election. Look at the endorsements that we've received from the mayor of Kitzmiller and the mayor of Mountain Lake Park and Garrett County, 3 of the 4 council members in Cumberland, mayors across Washington County, the president of the Frederick County Council, right? These are people who understand how to win in parts of the district that are not as blue as right here.
15.
They've gotten to know the candidates. They understand who is the best to not only to win this primary and to represent this district, but to win this general election. I am proud to have a broad coalition of support, including these local leaders across the 6th Congressional District, including a number of unions, including the Sierra Club. And we're building the coalition that will get us a victory on May 14th and in November. And I hope you all join our campaign as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Mr. Kiamba White.
Yes, hi. For me personally, professionally, I have worked or lived in areas, rural, urban, and suburban hubs where I've been a group of different folks of color. I've been sometimes one of only a few people of color. With my union experience and my political experience in the Michigan Ohio Democratic parties, I have worked and represented individuals where there was no one around who looked like me, but I still believe that we are better together. We have more similarities than we do differences. And I think it's so important for the endorsements and having the proper funding. To me, it's about getting in front of those folks who maybe 90% of them won't vote for you, but to let them know who you are as a person. That's something I feel in my heart and my soul that, God doesn't make any mistakes, universe making mistakes, but sometimes the creations do. And we have to make sure that our brothers and sisters, regardless of how they look,
15,
economic status, know that we are here together to work with them and that I want their votes, regardless of what their beliefs are. I tell folks, because I'm pro-choice, I mean I'm anti-life. And we can agree to disagree on things sometimes, as long as we respect each other as human beings. And I will get in front of each and every person as many as possibility to show them that and show my past history of why I want to hopefully contribute making their lives better because they're making mine better as a representative of the 6th district. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Mr. Ashwani Jain.
Yeah, thanks for that question. It's important, right? Money, unfortunately, has corrupted our politics so much that the media will only report on candidates based on their fundraising numbers. But many of the top fundraisers in this race are taking money from out-of-state donors, corporations, special interests, and super PACs. And they're not as efficient with their donor money. On the other hand, by spending less than $30,000, my campaign was the first to share the most detailed policies, all written by residents, not consultants, signed up over 213 active volunteers from this district, canvassed more than 38,000 individual voters across this district, had the most visibility through yard signs, social media ads, commercials, and TV interviews. And we've already earned the support of Democrats, independents, and Republicans, including elected officials and community leaders. We were even recognized by the
15,
Washington Post as one of the top candidates with the most name recognition and resources. In doing so, we have proven that we can win not only this primary, but also win the general. And you can go to janeforcongress.com to learn more and to sign up to help us.
Thank you. I am going to move on now to closing statements, which means hopefully that we will get out of here by 8:30. Last time we were cut off exactly at 8:30 and we lost half of a closing statement. So I'm going to try and not do that to everybody tonight. So we're going to move on to closing statements. And I'm going to start first with Councilmember Sales. And we'll do a minute 30 for this. I think we have enough time to do that. So we'll start with Councilmember Sales.
Thank you again, Andrew, and to all of the Up-County Democrats who have joined us this evening. The situation in Washington is critical and time is of the essence. I mentioned time because we are less than 60 days away from Election Day. And as we know, every election is consequential, and this one no less. The margin to ensure that we maintain the current slim minority that we have in Congress is too important. We cannot afford to lose this seat. I know what it takes to flip a seat blue. I know what it takes to win a tough election. Representing a rural part of Montgomery County and urban parts of Montgomery County have prepared me to represent this 6th congressional district that runs across 5 counties. I currently represent over 1 million residents, and the 6th district has less than 800,000 residents. I currently represent 40% of the electorate. The times that we are seeing in Washington demands someone to act with immediate intention. We need to ensure that we send a Democrat to Congress who can
15,
build bridges, build consensus, and get things done. We have too much chaos and division already happening in our communities, and we need a consensus builder who will get the job done and build bridges to bring consensus building policies and legislation to the residents across the 6th district. Our smarter agenda ensures that possibility, and you can go to salesforus.com to learn more and learn how you can join our sales force to ensure our victory on Tuesday, May 14th. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go next to Delegate Vogel.
My family immigrated here when I was 3 years old. And I don't think anyone in my family, let alone myself, growing up as a shy kid that I was, ever imagined that I would go on to serve this community in the state legislature, the community that raised me, let alone run to represent this community in the United States Congress. It is an honor to represent you. It is an honor to run to represent you in the United States Congress. Three generations in my family, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, all experienced the loss of democracy in their home countries. And I've made it very clear I refuse to be the fourth generation in a row to experience the loss of democracy. But we have a real fight right now in our country. It is not just a fight against the autocrats and the wannabe fascists like Dan Cox and Donald Trump. It is also a fight to restore faith in our democracy. I was in Cumberland a few months ago, and a young woman, 25 years old, came up to me from across the room, and she said, "I hate Democrats and I hate politicians. They're all out of touch. They don't live here. They don't understand my issues." And I said, "I'm different." Right. And we worked on building that trust. We worked on earning her support. She's gone on to march with us at parades. She's now a volunteer with our campaign. We are building a real movement from Garrett County to Gaithersburg that is going to win this election on May 14th.
15.
Is going to secure us a victory this November. Please join our campaign. Go to joevogel.org/donate to chip in and volunteer with us. You know how to reach me. Join our campaign. We need all the help we can get in these next 55 days to win this thing.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Kiambo White.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you everyone speaking today, Uptown Democrats. I appreciate your time and your kindness today. I mean, for me, we live in a beautiful and diverse nation. As we continue to strive for more perfect union, which we always hear about, I truly believe we must work together to produce the society that we exceeds our expectations. Not only do I believe that, but I also seen it with my own eyes, and I'm living proof of the power and influence. You know, I watched friends of my parents who were from Latin and South America work 3 jobs to kind of provide a better life for the next generation. I watched some of my white neighbors who grew up with different points of views and sometimes not, feeling what their thoughts about people of color, but gradually changed and embraced a better way, inclusive way of thinking. I've witnessed, as a black male, different black fathers who try to defy every stereotype and go on to achieve some of the greatest victories you can as a human being, as in college graduations, home ownership, the things that sometimes we don't feel we can obtain. And for me, it's a beautiful thing where I feel we should always try to strive for the new possibilities where we don't see any and welcome the moments that can change everything. In Maryland, I feel everyone's interconnected. It requires maybe holistic and forward thinking approaches, but I'm ready to engage with broad coalitions of diverse constituencies
15.
to utilize my background and to hopefully have a more equitable and prosperous future, not just for myself, but all those around me. So I ask you to please join me at Kiambo White, that's KIAMBO, WHITE.com, or BO White for Congress.com. We're looking for volunteers and donations. And if you have any questions, please contact me directly. My cell phone number is on there and my email. But I look forward to meeting everyone and hopefully getting your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go next to Ashwani J.
Thank you so much for putting this together. I know all of us candidates are keeping you all busy. What is needed in Congress right now is someone who understands, again, how to build coalitions at the federal level and fight for federal funding for our district. As I mentioned earlier, I have the most expansive federal experience of anyone in this race. That includes being appointed to 2 different offices in President Obama's White House and 2 federal agencies. I also come from a family of immigrants who worked hard to achieve their American dream. And they taught me if we're lucky enough to open that door of opportunity for ourselves, we must keep that door open for everyone behind us, and we must demand better. I was lucky enough to be given another opportunity at life once I beat cancer at the age of 13. And I have dedicated every single day of my life since to empowering others to demand better as well. And that's why I'm running for Congress in my home district. So you can learn more, reach out to us, join us at janeforcongress.com. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. I'm going to go last to Mr. Mohammed Mazumdar.
I like to see all the communities to get together, especially in Israel and Palestinians should live together in one state solution, and that can be a final solution for a long time. And then the other places what we do work as a I have been to U.S. Department of Energy for about 30 years. I have been working with the defense program. I have been with the NNSA, National Security Administration. I have been working with remote control, with different management, and I have been supporting U.S. Department of
15.
Energy for last 30 years. Thank you. So please help me by joining me with Democratic Party for the government of this.
Well, thank you for your time. And special thank you to all of our partners and to Sharon, who's got the hardest job here timing all of us. So thank you, Sharon, and to everyone
You're very welcome.
who is working on this. And thank you to all the attendees who were able to join us tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity to hear from these candidates and to hear from all of you. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Andrew.
you.
Thank you so much.